McAllister, are you supporting your party's candidate for President of the United States?
I don't even know if this is very much of a valid question. I've been on the record for this for 15 months, to the chagrin of some Republicans. I have not supported the candidacy nor the nomination of Donald Trump. But I think the more important question here tonight is a twofold one. Number one, will Mr. Doyle say that Black Lives Matter? Because his voting record doesn't say that. And according to the DNC, they were told not to engage Black activists on this issue. And number two, if we're talking about supporting presidential nominees, will Mr. Doyle renounce the Clinton campaign for the anti-Catholic rhetoric that came out of their campaign, which called our shared Catholicism a backwards religion that brought out the worst in America?
Well, let me ask you, just to clarify, you say you're not supporting Donald Trump. Are you going to vote for Hillary Clinton?
No, I'm not going to vote for Hillary Clinton because we have seen the corruption coming out of the Clinton campaign, both in the 1990s as well as what we're seeing in 2016.
Just go.
Well, I would just say, here's a
Same, by the way, same question. Are you supporting your party's nominee?
Yeah, I'm an early supporter of Hillary Clinton. I've been a surrogate speaker for her, and she will be the next president of the United States. Here's a person that wants to represent Pittsburgh region in Congress, who does not want to work with the next president of the United States. If you believe Donald Trump's going to be the president of the United States, well, this young man just said he's not for him either. But if you believe Hillary Clinton's going to be elected president, and I believe that is absolutely going to happen, you're going to send a representative down to Congress that has just told you that he thinks she's corrupt and that he's not going to work with her. That's not going to be good for Pittsburgh. We need a representative that can work with the administration. My work with the Obama administration in the past 6 years has brought over $75 million of resources to the city of Pittsburgh and communities like the Lower Hill District and East Liberty and Rankin throughout the Mon Valley. You get things done by working together. Why send somebody down here that is not going to work with the administration that's going to be in power? It doesn't make sense.
John, I didn't say I wouldn't work with the Clinton administration. You asked me how I felt about her. You said, are you going to vote for her? I said, no, I think she's corrupt. At the same exact time, if she's the 45th president of the United States, the people of this congressional district are who matter the most. The bottom line is the mess that you've helped create over the course of the last 22 years with some of the biggest disparities in this district, in the nation, somebody has to fix it. You haven't been doing that. You said that you've gone down to the Mon Valley and done these things. Well, let's talk about the unemployment rates down in McKeesport of 16%, in Braddock of 15%. Let's talk about Duquesne where it's over 20%. It's been that way for decades now. So no, I can care less about my personal feelings with the Clintons. My bottom line is I will be getting stuff done in a bipartisan way, unlike what you've done.
The worst part of the 22 years you keep referring to is the 8 years of the Bush administration. That's when this country had a recession. Not during the Clinton administration and not during the Obama administration who's been digging ourselves out of it. So you can keep talking about 22 years, but the 8 years of your president are the ones that put this country in a recession.
Well, first of all, you were in Congress, he was your president too. Second of all, we did have 9/11. We did have multiple wars that we had. We had 3 recessions during that decade. 2001, right after 9/11, 2003 as an aftermath of 9/11, and then 2007, based on economic policies that you helped put in place in the 1990s. So let's not act like you come up here with clean hands and you're going to put this all on President Bush. And by the way, if it's so much on President Bush, why are we still struggling with the recovery 8 years later with the worst workforce participation rate since the 1970s, basically since you started in politics?
Well, let me say, number one, I didn't vote to send our troops to Iraq, to that phony war that George Bush put us in, that cost millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in treasury and bloodshed of innocent lives, not only in that country, but in our own country, number one. Number two, the policies of the Clinton administration in the 90s led to record surpluses and almost an elimination of the debt. George Bush's foray into Iraq, which was the biggest mistake ever made by a president in history, is part of the reason we have a recession in this country. Barack Obama has brought us from 600,000 jobs losing every month to record, but not to record, but to positive employment. He's done a very good job, and he would have done better if it wasn't for all the Republican obstructionism.
All right, Mr. Doyle, let me ask you this question. We've got a number. I'm not sure whose bike is doing that. We've got a number of questions on the issue of abortion. So let me just ask you, what is your stance on abortion, and what is your view on funding for abortion or organizations that withdraw, starting.
Yeah, I don't know anybody that's pro-abortion when we have this discussion. I think that is a most, I don't think that's funny. I don't think anybody that is ever put in that situation. I don't think that any person that has to go through that, and I know people who have made that very, very tough decision, does it because they're pro-abortion. I think it should be rare, but it is the law of the land. A woman has an absolute right to seek an abortion if she feels she needs to do that. That's a personal choice that women have. Now, having said that, I am a big supporter of Title X and organizations like Planned Parenthood and others who seek to make things available for women who don't want to have children, to make sure that they have access to contraception and also access to good information so that they can, if they don't want to have a child, bring a child into the world, that they can make that decision. Also, I think there's many instances where a woman has to face a difficult choice. You see the Zika virus right now that's ravaging certain parts of the world and in southern parts of Florida. It's a terrible decision that a woman would have to make if she was infected with Zika while pregnant, and then decide whether or not to bring that baby to term if it had a deformity that you see in those cases. So I think we need to respect women on this.
Thank you, Congressman. Mr.
But I
McAllister,
think,
same question.
John, I think the deeper question is, do we want to give $580 million annually to an organization that has one of the most insidious pasts in American history between the eugenics and the racist movement of Planned Parenthood, that was doing eugenics projects all the way up through the 1980s on rural Americans in rural North Carolina, Appalachia, including West Virginia, and Kentucky? Do we want to continue to give $580 million annually to an organization that's going to take part of those funds and funnel it right back into political campaigns such as your own? Or can we give it to women's organizations that, whether they be pregnancy centers, whether they be Christian centers, or others that are going to provide women's health care in a way where that money still is purposed for women's health care without having it be as controversial as it is? Now, I understand why the Democrats want to continue to give Planned Parenthood money, because we've seen, even with President Obama, that he's willing to hold up Medicaid funding, which he did in Indiana in 2011, to make sure that Planned Parenthood got their money at the state level. But that's too much playing politics with women's health. There's an opportunity to make sure that multiple organizations have that money and women across the board can have the health care needs met that they are looking for.
I understand your funding question, but let me just ask the basic question that was included here, and that is, do you support a woman's right to choose an abortion?
Well, I'm pro-life. I'm a pro-life American. My goal is not so much to try to go after Roe v. Wade. My goal is to bring down the abortion rate as much as possible. My goal is to make sure that women are not choosing abortions as much as they had 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 20 years ago.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Well, I think on that then we agree, because that's my goal too. But let me say this, the Title X money isn't exclusive to Planned Parenthood. It can go to many different organizations. And secondly, Mr. McAllister, Planned Parenthood has never given me a penny in any of my campaigns.
You're telling me they've never
Mr.
given that?
McAllister, you have the last word.
Okay, well, first of all, I said giving money to Democratic candidates, well over $25 million over the last couple of years, number one. Number two, $580 million to one organization alone. That's 60% of their operating budget, and it's one of the most controversial organizations in the history of the United States, particularly over the 20th century. We can talk about Margaret Sanger, we can talk about the Guttemacher Institute, or anything else along those lines. So to give $580 million when we have a congressional candidate or a congressional district here that's full of unemployment, that's full of bad schools, that's full of people that need jobs, I think that we can repurpose the money in a completely different way, if we need to.
Well, I would just say that a good bulk of that money goes to constituents right here in the 14th Congressional District, and no federal dollars that go to Planned Parenthood can be used for abortion.
Okay, you get the last word.
Well, just because you're not paying for the procedure doesn't mean it's not paying for the lights to be on, it's not paying for the advertising for it, it's not paying for candidates that are going to continue those policies in place. So let's not act like the money, just because it's not going to the doctor performing this procedure, that it's not going to the procedure overall.
All right, let me ask this question. I'm loud enough. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Mike? All right. Jobs. Both of you have talked about jobs. Both of you have talked about economic opportunity. Mr. McAllister, we're going to start with you in this round. What ideas do you have to improve jobs and economic opportunity in this congressional district?
Well, first, you have to do two things. Number one, you have to allow people to have access to capital. Mr. Doyle voted for the Dodd-Frank regulations that have basically kept more money on the sidelines and has have prevented poor small business owners and entrepreneurs from being able to access capital to start their own businesses, to hire people. The whole purpose of the bailout was to make sure that small businesses could keep their doors open and small banks could keep their doors open. Instead, small businesses went away, small banks went away. That's the first one. You have to make sure there's access to capital. The second thing is you have to provide a level of educational equality. You can't keep kids trapped in bad schools. We have 4 of the worst school districts in the United States, or in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, right here between Stowe Rock, Wilkinsburg, Duquesne, Penn Hills. You can't keep them locked in bad schools and say you want them to prosper and grow. You have to have school choice. You have to be able to embrace all different avenues of education while at the same exact time allowing entrepreneurs the opportunity to be able to create business once again and bring small businesses back to the small towns such as Braddock and elsewhere.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Doyle, same question. What are you doing, what can you do to bring jobs and economic opportunity to this congressional district?
Yeah, and not everyone's going to be an entrepreneur. Some people need access to jobs that they can sustain a family. And back when I was a kid, if you had a strong back and strong arms, you could get a job that you could sustain your family. My father worked at Edgar Thompson Steel Mill in Braddock, and my grandfather at the Kerry Furnace in Franklin. Today, it's a different economy, and it's not your strong back, it's this. And we have to make that transformation to this kind of economy. It's not 4-year engineering degrees at Carnegie Mellon that people need, but it is specialized training. I have worked to create the Energy Innovation Center in the Hill District. That was the old former Conley Vocational School. We have taken that center. We have now 29 different businesses that work in that center. We have business incubators. We have after-school programs for people in the Hill District to get STEM education. We need to start to train our workforce here in Pittsburgh for the opportunities that are coming down the pipeline. The Shell plant is going to have a lot of downstream opportunities for our people, but they need to have some training. I have worked hard throughout my career to make sure that we have access to those kinds of programs.
Mr. Doyle, I don't doubt that you work hard, but I'm still looking at the unemployment rates at double digits. I'm still looking at the biggest disparities between young and old, rich and poor, black and white in this region when it comes to education, when it comes to employment, and when it comes to economics. So I understand that you may have worked hard for 22 years, but if your hard work over 22 years only happens at this point in time, what further are we going to need to do? Because it seems like you seem to be tapped out of where you're going to go.
Well, let me say this, Lenny. First of all, I'm sure if you get elected, you'll turn this all around in a year or two. Let me say this. One person doesn't turn this economy around. I know you'd like to make me responsible for 22 years
You're the dean of the Pennsylvania delegation.
in the Pittsburgh region. It's much bigger than that. It's not only federal policy, it's state policy, it's local policy, it's corporate decisions made in a boardroom that some government has no say over. The best we can do in our region, and what I've done throughout my whole career, is to work cooperatively in every one of these communities with our elected officials to push Pittsburgh forward, to make sure that our region continues to grow. And as much as you seem to want to tear the Pittsburgh region down as being terrible for the last 22 years, there's been a lot of good things happening in our region too. Now, am I satisfied that everything's great? No. I know we've got a lot of work to do. But I've been working every day to push us in that right direction, and we need some help from Washington, D.C. And if your party would quit obstructing President Obama, we can get more things done here.
Well, let's go to my party. My party did not have any control in 2009 and 2010 when President Obama was in there. My party did not have any control in Congress in 2007 and 2008 when a lame duck George W. Bush was in there. You had plenty of opportunities. In fact, you had 22 years of God-given opportunities to turn this around. Now you want to sit here, and the most that you have said during this debate is finger-wagging at the Republicans. You have 22 years of seniority. You're supposed to be skilled enough as a politician by this point in time after being in politics for 40 years to be able to get around those barriers and bring people together. If you can't do that with 22 years of seniority, why do you think year 23 and 24 is going to be any different?
I would just say to you that
I like that. I like that.
I would just say that I've been skilled enough to bring $75 million to this community in the last 5 years.
Don't show
And
us.
as far as working cooperatively, there isn't an elected official in Western Pennsylvania, Republican or Democrat, that will say to you that Mike Doyle doesn't work with them in a cooperative spirit to do good things for Pittsburgh. So sorry, I'm not the benevolent dictator of the United States that can make magic happen overnight. And I'm not responsible for the whole 22 years of what's happened in national policy. But I will tell you this, I have worked hard every day of my life to see Pittsburgh prosper because it's a place that I love and it's a place that I'm spending my whole life in, and this is where my children are, and I want everybody's children and grandchildren to grow and prosper here.
Thank you. You're right. And we start with Congressman Doyle on this. This is a question from a retired law enforcement officer who would like to know, do you support banning assault weapons and magazine clips that hold over 30 bullets? Do you support expanded background checks and closing all loopholes? Congressman Doyle.
You know, what's the purpose in a civil society of a gun that can shoot 50 bullets just by simply pulling the trigger like this? You don't hunt with a gun like this. You don't protect your family with a gun like this. These are military weapons that should be in the military. Now, I have an F- rating with the Firearm Owners Against Crime, the same organization that has endorsed Mr. McAllister.